Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/I don't work here lady, where Karens seem to keep confusing people as employees. And in today's episode, Karens are running wild again. A woman mistakes a paramedic for security, guys, and it just gets worse and worse. I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I'm a retired paramedic of 26 years. Over the years, I've encountered a lot of crazy situations involving Karens. But this one's the only time I can remember being mistaken for another employee. So the day this happened, I had just worked a 24-hour shift, running on 4 hours of sleep. I wanted to go home, but I had to stop at the local Walmart first. Now, the store I frequented was in a not-so-upscale neighborhood, so to speak. So the people there were oftentimes quite interesting. It's also a 24-hour Walmart, and we'd sometimes stop in there after midnight for snacks, only to see the finest store patrons drunk out of their minds, knocking things off shelves. Anyways, after my shift, I walked in the store, still in full uniform. Now, the uniform was easily confused with police and security guards' uniforms. We wore navy blue shirts with a badge, had an ID tag on the lanyard, and wore blue pants with navy stripes on the pant legs. We were often confused for police officers. I was in the dairy aisle with my cart, getting some milk. I got my milk, and I was about to push my cart to the next stop. Walking past one aisle, that's when I hear a woman loudly screaming something like, "I need someone to get me that bag off the top shelf." She then says in a more demanding tone, "I told you to simply get that bag for me. I'm not asking so nicely again." I can then see two boys leave the aisle and get in front of me. One boy saying, "Who does this old geezer think she is?" And then a response from the other boy who says, "Yeah, what a rude bitch. She didn't even ask." There were several others around me, so I thought nothing of it and continued shopping. I just shook my head. Again, the people of Walmart in my area. As I stop to get eggs, I can hear shouting from behind me. It's the woman, and she says, "Are you ignoring me or are you ignorant? I need your immediate assistance. Did you not see what happened when you walked past? Are you effing blind?" I just look around confused and say, "Are you speaking to me?" She then says in a condescending voice, "Well, you're the only security guard here I see, so yes, I'm talking to you. So stop shopping. You need to kick these juvenile delinquents out of the store. There are two kids who are harassing me." I reply tactfully, as I'm trying to get my shopping done, get my items, and get out. She then says to me, "Listen, you're the security guard on duty, so you have to get these obnoxious and rude kids out of the store." Meanwhile, I'm saying, "Ma'am, I'm trying to shop." She then says, while angrily marching towards me, "You either help me, you useless bastard, or I'll have you fired and banned from any job in security that you'll ever get." And things just went downhill from here. I was sleep deprived, and my normally calm and collected demeanor was spent. I told her, "I do not work here, woman. I'm a paramedic. I've tried to tell you, but all you do is scream in my face. I just got off a 24-hour shift, drove 35 minutes here from a long night of dealing with Karens with far more issues than you, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna put up with it from you for free. I barely get paid enough to deal with it while on duty, so please go find an actual security guard because I'm a medical professional." I left her pale as a sheet and made it far enough away when she yells, "You just go ahead and leave and never think about coming back. I know the manager here, and when he finds out you're not doing your job, there will be hell to pay. May God help you." Now, between the time "hell to pay" and "may God help you" were spoken, I was struck with a small bag of powdered sugar that exploded all over my uniform. And I have to admit, she did have quite the throwing arm. It didn't hurt, it just made one hell of a mess. The managers now heard what's going on and came up to us, asking me what happened first. I'm assuming because he saw me in a paramedic uniform. Karen immediately tries to butt into the conversation, but he told her we're talking and she would get her chance. And at that, Karen went ballistic. She screams and says, "You're taking his side?" He assaulted me, as well as the two other hoodlums that harassed and made fun of me for being old. All I wanted was help, and two rude kids called me an old geezer. And your idiot security guard won't even help me. I just pretty much told him everything I overheard and what the boy said. And then how she began to be so rude to me even after I told her multiple times that I don't work here. I told him he may want to check the security footage because if she touched those boys in any way, as well as her hitting me with powdered sugar, that I want assault charges pressed upon her. By this time, she's trying to make her way out of the store, but the manager radioed the true security and had them stop her until law enforcement could arrive. I offered to stay until they arrived. So long story short, Karen was arrested. I don't know what they saw when they checked the cameras, but they ended up placing her in handcuffs. She was crying, and despite crying, she was still a Karen. She yells out to the officers, the manager, and myself, and everyone standing around, "My husband is your local megachurch pastor, and I promise you that he will make sure all of you burn in hell, every single one of you." To add, I'm a Christian myself, and I know that I'm saved by grace through Jesus Christ, and there's nothing her husband can do to have that taken away from me. Well, isn't that nice? Like, it's always funny to hear Karen shouting at people that their husbands are pastors and everyone needs to obey them because blah blah blah. Like, not getting what you want and then acting a complete fool and then bringing religion into it is definitely not the right way to go, Karen. And this person comments, "I just hate seeing people who claim to be Christians acting in literally the exact opposite way to anything the Bible says." A few years back, a friend and I went out of state to visit another friend of ours. Oh, I'm also Asian, which is relevant to the story. When we arrived, we decided to go to his favorite anime goods store, mainly to wait until he was done with work. This place had everything an anime fan could want. T-shirts, plushies, figurines, DVD box sets, etc, etc. We browsed through all the goods and even made friends with some employees. I was browsing around, going up and down the tightly packed bookshelves when I hear the cry of a crazy lady. A woman says, "Excuse me, hello?" At this point, I was wondering if there was an employee around because the crazy lady was getting louder. All the while, I was in a mental war with myself over what I should buy. Eventually, the crazy lady hovers next to me, a foot away, her hands on her hips and her face looking down at me. Mind you, I'm exactly 5 feet tall, so everyone is tall from my perspective. She then says to me, do I need to talk to you in Chinese to get your attention?" The woman was older, with fake blonde hair, a disgustingly orange tan, yoga pants, and she looks like she just came from a workout class. I just realized she was talking to me for the first time, and I say, no, you don't need to do that to get my attention, but it's an easy way to lose my attention. She then replies, "Excuse me? You can't talk to me like that." I tell her, "You can't talk to me like that either." After a stare down that lasted a few seconds, I put away what I was holding and move on to the next set of shelves. I was hoping that was the end of it, but no. Karen comes after me as I'm going through the next set of shelves, and she says, "I don't know what your problem is, but you need to help me. It's your job. Stop messing around with the books and help me find a sweater in this size." I reply, no, it's not. This is definitely not my job. I do not work here." To which the woman says, yes it is. Who else would work here?" I say to her, "An actual employee maybe, like the one by the front door?" The woman then says, "Unbelievable. I don't like this service or your attitude. Don't you think I'm stupid? You Asians run this store, so you definitely work here." Now, unknown to Karen, the store was not completely run by Asians. The owners, who I had a brief conversation with earlier, were an Asian couple. The staff, on the other hand, are not all Asians. The cashier was a Hispanic girl, and the fella restocking and cleaning the shelves was a blue-haired white dude. Why she thought all the staff had to be Asian is beyond me. So back to my conversation. The woman is basically screaming at me at this point, saying, "Oh my god, how hard is it for you to do your job? Do I need to talk slower for you? I know you understand English." I tell her again, "Lady, I don't work here. Let me make this easier for you to understand. I do not live in this state, and I'm not employed in this state. Most employees would still put up with your attitude and help you. Notice how I'm not helping you in any way? Do you want to know why?" I got to see the woman's face contort into a mix of both confusion and frustration as I moved away from her site and continued back to browsing. All the while, I could hear the most audible groan from her. Fast forward to a few minutes later, and we're just about done looking around. My friend just had to get a few small things, so we head to the cashier to pay for the stuff when suddenly, Karen's right behind us. Before my friend could get a word into the cashier, Karen jumps to our side and she spoke to the cashier saying, Excuse me, I have a problem with her. This employee right here." Of course, the employee says that I'm a customer, and Karen does not like the idea of being wrong, so she doubles down on this and she talks louder. She then screams at the cashier saying, "Don't you lie to me, bitch. I know this Chinese girl works here. I've seen her before." The employee was stunned that she was just cussed at by some lady, and you could sense how pissed the employee was. But she kept her poker face and tried her damn best to resolve the issue. The employee says, "Miss, please, she doesn't work here. As you've heard her say, she's not even from this state. If you give me a moment, I can help you." Karen responds with, "Oh, no. Don't treat me like an idiot. You need to get your manager and have him speak with your employee. Don't you cover her." At this point, the owner comes to the rescue as he's come through the front door and could hear the argument. The owner says, "What happened here?" Karen just loses it and says, "Oh my god, are you the manager? She needs to get fired," pointing right to me. The owner says, "I own this store. What happened?" Karen tells him, "Your staff have been nothing but rude. And this girl," pointing to me, "did not even help, and she didn't give a crap about me, and your cashier is defending her. Is this how you treat a frequent customer?" The owner takes a look at me and he just shrugs, while the cashier has this exhausted look while shaking her head. The owner at this point is being bombarded by Karen. How I was a bad employee, how she didn't deserve this sort of treatment, how she demands compensation, the whole spiel. I could see the owner wasn't having any of it. Instead of listening to Karen anymore, he simply opens the door, points out the door, and he looked away from Karen and says, "You go now. Get out now." The woman stammers and says, "What? Did you not understand what I just said? I was treated rudely by your staff." The owner continues to not look at Karen, and he kept pointing outside saying, "No, you not understand. You go now." The owner then points to me and the cashier, and he says, "She no work here. She work here. You go or I call the police." Karen just responds, "I swear, you just lost a frequent customer. Do you have any idea how much I'm planning to spend in your store?" The owner says, "Go. You bother store. You go now. I don't need you." The woman then drops her stuff, which was a sweater and a cat plush, and she storms off. But not before giving off that high-pitched scream/groan mix in the parking lot. The owner's wife comes out of the office and she wonders what happened. She saw through the security cameras and asked what the problem was. The owner said something in Chinese as he watched the Karen leave. I'm guessing he was making sure she wasn't coming back. He tells his wife what happened, and the employee simply does her job of ringing up my friend's stuff, who was just in awe of what happened, basically speechless the whole time. My friend and I, plus the cashier, simply laughed it off, and the owners of the store apologized to me, but I wasn't too bummed about it. I told him I lived in New York, and the crazies are practically a normal occurrence. But to think that I'd have such an encounter in a store that sells anime stuff, it just goes to show you to be very wary of Karens, because they can appear in any store or restaurant. Oh man, the ignorance of that lady is crazy, guys. Like the fact that she was like, "You look Asian and we're in this anime store, so you have to serve me," is just mind-boggling. And seriously, I laughed out loud when the woman was kicked out and was like, "Do you know how much I was planning to spend in your store?" Like really, Karen, you think your $50 worth of crap is keeping the store open? I just love that the owner was like, "We don't need you." With that said though, nothing like racism to make a trip that much better, right? So you could say that I'm a model retail employee. I'm polite, I have the patience of a saint, I know how to crack jokes, I willingly engage random customers when I'm out as I'm friendly, and I tend to know what I'm talking about. I live in an extremely small town of 2,500 people, and I was at the local grocery store where almost everyone knows each other. I'm also friends with quite a few employees. Now I know I ooze the retail vibe, and most of the time, if I can help, I will, as long as the person's polite. Well, today, I was in a pretty big rush to get in, get out, and get cooking. I'm cruising the aisles when I see Mark. Mark's a chill guy who moved here so he could raise his daughter in a more wholesome setting. He works there and he's stalking. I take maybe 30 seconds to say hi, ask how his wife and daughter are, and carry on. Typical small town way. About 5 minutes later, I'm a couple of aisles down and I hear a woman's voice. I cringe internally cause it's the soccer mom voice. Let's call her Karen. Karen's pretty obviously a tourist and the bad kind to boot. The woman says to me, "Hey you." I look around because no one else is around and I say, "Me?" Karen says, "Yeah, you. Where's the clams?" Now that's an interesting question. This store has a limited seafood department, so your best bet is canned or jarred. There's 2 aisles with canned goods and 1 with jarred. It could be any of them. I wouldn't know for sure as I'm not a big seafood eater. I just want her gone, so I tell her the aisles and move to continue on my way. That's when the woman snaps her fingers twice and she says, "Well, take me there." I tell her I don't work here. She then says, obviously you do. I watched you help the other guy stock shelves. Don't try to get out of helping me. I say to her, I do not work here. She then mumbles something about getting a manager, and I say, you don't have to get a manager because I'm not an employee. I then turn to walk off again, and she grabs me by the shoulder, and she says, you are waiting right here. I then slapped her hand off my shoulder so hard that it sent some stuff flying off the shelf. I then got pissed and say, you listen here and you listen well. I've got patience for days with your type, but if you touch me again, you will face a wrath kin to no other. You hear? I don't effing work here, and I never have. I'm just a polite person unlike yourself, so go find your own damn clams. She just stood there in shock while I walked off. I saw the woman as I was checking out, talking to the store manager and throwing a hissy fit when she found out I did not, in fact, work there. Guys, I've said it once and I'll say it again. There's never a good reason to put your hands on anybody, let alone try to restrain them. And honestly, Opie smacking her hand off their shoulder and telling her off was letting her off easy. I just hope the woman learned something that day. And this person says, one time I was in Target and I was having a hard time finding something. I thought I was alone, as usually I can sense people near me. The next thing I know, this older woman had crept up on me. She got really close before I noticed and started asking me if some item was in stock. And I freaked out and yelled, and that's when she tried giving me a hug, telling me it was okay. She kept trying to put her hands on my face, repeating, it's okay, while I was backing up, insert panic mode. I just got out of there ASAP, saying I'm getting security. And hearing me say I'm calling security threw this woman into a frenzy, and she got even more aggressive at trying to grab me. I just threw my basket at her and started to kick her and ran. So this happened a while back, but I had to share it. I was 14 years old at the time. I went to a local store with my parents. As usual, me and my parents entered the store and we split up to get our separate groceries. I was picking up some miscellaneous snacks, like chips, sausages, and beef jerky. I had found some chips in a flavor that I like, but not the brand I wanted. And so I put the chips back on the shelf. And here comes a woman, maybe in her late 40s or 50s, asking me why the pizza rolls were so expensive. I told her I don't know and that I don't work here. Now I can kind of see why she thought I was an employee. I was wearing a black shirt and black jeans, and employees wear that as well, but they have name tags on. As soon as I say I don't work here, the woman says to me, don't you try to fool me, I know you work here. I tell her, no ma'am, I do not, I'm just a 14-year-old getting groceries. That's when a cashier from the front came and asked us what's wrong, to which the woman says, this employee was mean and refuses to help me. That's when the dumbfounded employee says, he doesn't work here. He then turns to me and asked if I did anything to make her think I was an employee here. I explained the situation to him and he had this look on his face, something like, I don't want to deal with this right now. He then tells the lady to calm down and then goes back to the registers. The lady then throws a tantrum, screaming that nobody will help her with anything, and then runs her hands through the shelves, putting a bunch of boxes on the floor and breaking several bottles. The supervisor called the cops like any sane person would. Meanwhile, I just stood there in awe. The cops arrived while she was screaming at me, and I don't remember what she said. We were both made to sit down while they looked through the security footage. And it turns out Karen had been shoplifting and she was caught putting several items in her handbag. When the cops tried to cuff her, she somehow resisted and she hit her head on the wall. Her nose then starts bleeding. Now I don't know what happened next because I had gone back to shopping. The cashier told me that she was charged with assault, larceny, and vandalism. I'm not sure what happened to her after that. This is not the typical story that normally ends up here, mainly because unfortunately I was the lady in this story, and it had a light-hearted ending. but I figured I'd share it because of how funny and embarrassing it was. So anyways, I currently work as a head waitress at a popular banquet facility that could host up to 2,000 people. Unfortunately, as parties that size only usually happen a few times a year, the venue doesn't employ enough staff to fit that number. Instead, it hires from a temp agency, and we have workers that come in and help us serve the big parties. On those nights, I would have to train sometimes up to 15 new people on the spot to work that night, and this was one of those occasions. The party we were serving was for a local police force a few counties over. Of course, that meant that most of those attending were officers in regular dress clothes. The employee uniform for the venue was a black shirt, black dress pants, and a gold tie. The temp employees had the exact same uniform, with one difference: they had black ties. This would be the reason for all the confusion. Part of the food service includes family-style soup, which means a large pot of soup with a ladle is placed on each table and the guests help themselves. We then replace them when they get empty. Now, replacing soup pots is a two-person job, as you need someone to hold the near-empty pot while you put the full one on the table. It's kind of hard to explain without having a visual in front of me. Regardless, you need two people, or else you'll have a high risk of spilling everything and getting burned. I was about to replace one of these pots when I see a gentleman wearing black dress clothes and a black tie standing next to one of my tables. Thinking he's one of my temps and being my socially awkward and apologetically polite self, I say to him, "I'm sorry, could you just hold this for me for a second?" He smiles widely and happily says, "Sure," and then takes the pot. It takes me a total of 3 seconds to replace it with a full one. And when I turn back to him, I take the empty pot back and begin to thank him when I realize a barely noticeable dark gray decorative pattern on his dress shirt. I basically crap myself and realize my mistake and say, "Oh no, you're not one of my guys." He just burst out laughing, as does his table and several tables around us. I cover my face in embarrassment and he pulls me in for a hug and tells me to not worry about it. Once my embarrassment settles, we laugh for another minute. And for the rest of the night, that table and the 3 in my section surrounding it would tease me, reminding that they don't work there whenever I walked by their tables. All in all, I got a good tip and it was a great night. Guys, this was such a wholesome post that I had to share it. And I especially love that the tables continued to joke about it after, and OP was a great sport about it. It would have been hilarious though if OP just turned to him and said, "Well, it is your job to protect and serve, right? So get to it then." And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /I don't work here lady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our /EntitledPeople episode, where a psycho Karen dude demands a date because apparently it's an employee's job to date him. It's a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.